With the rise of Udyr as a legitimate meta pick throughout the world, I think a lot of people are still reeling from the surprise of this ancient champion re-entering the limelight. I've been capable of sitting down with a number of professional coaches, junglers, and supports and pitch them one explanation that I found to be congruent with how and where we are primarily seeing Udyr picked. And it's my objective in this video to help explain to the general public how we went from perceiving Udyr as a troll pick who is functionally worthless to a pick that is actually extremely useful in the current jungle and support meta landscape. Without a doubt, the place we have to begin is the 9.23 jungle changes, which reduced minor camp respawn time of 2 minutes and 30 seconds down to only 2 minutes. Before this point, as you can remember during the Season 9 World Championship, we saw a lot of the more slow-clearing junglers who had really strong dueling capabilities. Lee Sin, Gragas, Elise, and even jungle Qiyana. Gragas is a bit of an outlier in this regard since he still clears slower than the really speedy junglers, but still faster than the aforementioned cast of junglers. After this change, we started seeing a gradual shift away from these dueling picks towards junglers like Olaf, who captured the second highest jungle pick rate during the 2020 LCK spring season. This was by no means immediate though, and we would have to wait until patch 10.4 when Riot changed the formula for jungle levels, which made cycling camps slightly more important and more useful to build a gradual lead over your opponent. 10.8 further increased the importance of cycling camps with the extra level given to these camps at average level champion 9. And in line with this, it's around after 10.8, which correlates to around the summer season for most professional leagues, when we really saw some of these champions start to get picked up even more. If you remember, people were quite surprised when T1's Cuz played Graves during the 2020 LCK Spring Finals, first picking it on blue side. And this concluded in T1 absolutely wiping the floor with Genji, and a lot of praise was handed to Cuz. I would argue that while Cuz did play really well, T1 had a much better understanding of the developing jungle meta. While T1 was picking up champions like Olaf and Graves, Genji was still stuck picking Rek'Sai and Jarvan 4, and you don't need to be a jungler to understand that these picks clear much differently. All you need to do is watch the games, where Cuz nearly Flame Horizons Clid's Rek'Sai on his Graves. It's these sort of changes that make me think the argument of Graves got plus 3 AD this buff, these small things matter a lot, as being somewhat reductionist. Yes, 3 AD is actually pretty substantial. Just like Karthus losing 5 MS is substantial, these are critical seconds that we are losing or gaining clearing the jungle while pathing from camp to camp, time that we could spend ganking lanes or warding, etc. What's very important, however, is figuring out how important it is to actually clear these camps in the first place. What is the opportunity cost for clearing these camps? Well, in the past it was quite high because catch-up XP made farming camps superfluous a lot of the time. Early game pathing generally mattered more since you had to figure out what you needed and what you didn't need before chain ganking a lane. All you need to do is watch Season 8 Worlds, where a jungler like Ning won Finals MVP, and Broxah looked extremely competitive for the title of Best Jungler in the world. Just as an addendum, I'm not saying that Broxah or Ning are insane early game pathers, just that they thrived in this meta where they didn't have to choose between ganking lanes and farming their jungle. The decision was already made for them. On the other hand, early game paths have become much more reductive at this point. You mostly full clear. If you do know where the enemy jungle starts, you may be capable of 3 camping into a cheese gank, provided you path opposite of them, which denies their capability of 3 quadranting you if the enemy laners simply choose to blow flash to keep their health high while denying you invade. It's this high jungle clear time that creates this high opportunity cost for early ganks. While you're cheesing the enemy bottom lane, the enemy Graves is clearing your entire top side while he can circle back around to his top side to clear it after starting on his bottom side. You are absolutely fucked at this point if you're a jungler, even if you just double killed their bottom lane. The enemy Graves has timers on your camps and is going to coordinate priority with his solo laners to invade and kill you at your red buff. But what do supports have to do with the evolving jungle meta? Well, all we have to do is view the cast of characters that have become meta junglers. Graves, Hecarim, Olaf, Lilia, and maybe even Nidalee or Kindred in certain matchups. What do these junglers generally have in common? Their engage is quite poor, but even more importantly, they are extremely squishy and incapable of face checking to facilitate the placement of vision throughout the mid to late game, with an exception to Olaf. Before you say Hecarim, have fun using your E point blank. You have an entire ability removed from your kit if you find a Leona in a bush somewhere with their Samira close behind. Say goodbye to your ultimate for 90 seconds. While engage supports have been meta for a long time, in fact, I would say that Nautilus in particular has been meta since around April of Season 9, despite these picks being meta for a while, with these squishy low engage, hard to face check junglers, the tanky, melee, engagey supports fulfilled an additional function. They facilitated the placement of vision by way of their capability to face check for vision throughout the mid to late game. Hypothetically, if you were to time your waves perfectly and basically play chess like a robot, you would not need to face check, since you would always have perfect wave timings to create a high opportunity cost for the enemy if they ever did decide to death brush you around an objective. Unfortunately, this is really hard or next to impossible. Teams screw up, waves get stuck and frozen at inopportune times, and waves will get launched into your tower with 40 seconds until Dragon, where the enemy team will sweep your vision and will deny you entry while you fix your waves to a semi-reasonable state so you don't lose 300 plus gold and substantial EXP for a Cloud Dragon. So, right now, the stale meta of League of Legends, particularly in the jungle and support role, is simple to understand. Clearing the jungle and cycling camps is very important, since catch-up XP is gone now. Jungle is perceived as broken because for one of the first times since Season 6 or so, farming camps is so imperative that better jungler wins can basically be synonymous with "you got to full clear more than me, you win." Junglers get 6 items now, so they aren't kneecapped in the late game by having a smite item, and junglers don't even level that slowly anymore because of their high XP camps and jungle item, which gives plus 60 bonus XP for the large monsters that get killed. These junglers can't face check as easily, except for Olaf, which is a major reason he's turbo broken. This causes the near necessity for supports to pick these high engaged, tanky melee supports. Ever wonder why Rakan, despite seemingly fulfilling this niche of high engage, somewhat melee support, is never picked, even when Saya has re-entered the meta, courtesy to some extent of E-Star's super AD carry Rat? Rakan can't face check either since he's so squishy, even if he provides and supplements engage. This segues into our next chapter, but we're not quite at Udyr yet, the recent rise of the legendary Groomstone build. Moonstone plus Staff of Flowing Water provides plentiful and cheap stats. Who do these items work best on? Champions with a low opportunity cost for building them. Nidalee is a pretty obvious one. Lilia. Junglers work great since you can still pick up a Leona or Nautilus, Alistar, Rel in draft. Seraphine middle lane, another excellent option since she scales so well off of raw AP while still providing utility, which is a hallmark of the mid lane role. Unfortunately, once you get into picks like Orianna, while it's still quite good, you start hitting a more elastic opportunity cost. Orianna has a great strength in the early game, and it's this sort of clunky build path that makes her miss out on her solid early game in return for this utility. This is further worsened when you consider that a big advantage of picking Orianna is that she is a safe, blindable mid laner that generally can get priority throughout the early stages of the game in order to defend her jungler from early game enemy aggression, or facilitate that aggression onto the enemy jungler a la Renekton in the top lane. Who has the lowest opportunity cost for Groomstone? Range supports, of course. It's pretty much perfect for them. This creates a challenging dynamic for teams in the draft phase. Nidalee is good, but I wouldn't consider her an S tier jungler. Lilia is great, but Hecarim can match her clear and counter her in teamfights. If you throw Groomstone on a range support, it's easy to miss out on a strong support jungle 2v2 that's capable of facilitating the placement of vision. Mid lane, top lane, even bottom lane carry Seraphine, these are high econ roles that will hit item breakpoints really fast, but they will miss out on bringing their team's hallmarks of the role they inhabit. Range DPS threat, disengage, poke, and etc. It's been so long into the video, almost 10 minutes, and we finally get to talk about him. Udyr. Udyr is unique in many ways. He is capable of clearing extremely fast leashless, which has become important for junglers since the laners are so much smarter than they were in seasons of the past. If you leash topside while the enemy jungler doesn't have to, he will pull your wave and let the wave slow push into him, and he will freeze it on you, while his jungler paths top and will pressure you, causing you to miss so much CS and XP. If you have to leash bottom lane while their team doesn't, they will box you off the wave or fast push for level 2 onto crash on wave 3 and will cause the wave to slow push into you and then freeze it on you, causing the enemy jungler to basically do the same exact thing to you on bottom side. Tanks generally have a really hard time doing leashless clears at a consistent rate in order to hit for scuttle spawn, Udyr being a big exception. Udyr can clear leashless at a reasonable 305 and can still make it on scuttle spawn. I've tried so many weird junglers to try to fulfill the niche Udyr does, a fast clearing tank that is capable of freeing his support up to pick a moonstone support to cash in on the big AP in the early game. Mordekaiser, Mundo, on and on. None of them clear as fast as Udyr, or they limp to scuttle with minimal HP, an easy target for collapsing laners or an aggressing enemy. Udyr can finish with full HP on time, he can duel in the early game, and he can face check throughout the mid to late game. Sure, his engage is by no means good, but this is supplemented by Hextech Chemtank, Phase Rush, and even by a top laner or a mid laner with additional boosts. Think something like Orianna W. Udyr, despite being a 10-year-old champion, is absolutely an anomaly in the current meta and checks boxes that no other champion immediately comes to mind as fulfilling. Being capable of clearing leashless is a tremendous boon to laners. It hides your direct pathing and can allow them to get priority in winning matchups or to win neutrals if enemy laners have to leash. It lets them set up waves so you can gank directly after in the early game. He can face check with little cost to himself by virtue of his high sustain, counter engage, and disengage. He cycles camps fast even in the early game when it's so important. Udyr is insane, not necessarily because his champion is well designed or even innately broken, but because this unique combination of meta shifts made it necessary for an optimal composition to build an extremely broken combination of items without compromising in a different aspect. The facilitation of vision placement without playing a next to perfect game of League of Legends with insane cross-map wave control. Picking Udyr does not always mean it will be paired with a moonstone support, but it does facilitate range supports in ways few other champions are capable of, and the rise of a decade-old champion due to these unique combination of problems that is currently facing the League of Legends metagame is one of the reasons I truly love this game. It's one big puzzle that's waiting to be solved, and champion picks are the tools that people use to do so. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments section below. Thanks to the King's GFX for the thumbnail as always. I appreciate you, and I'll hopefully see you soon.